and then we can, like, introduce what the podcast is about.
We should have practiced.
We should have practiced this.
I like how my audio recording piece is just, like, fucking 20 seconds of silence and then a high-pitched
Yeah. Okay. Okay, here we go. Ready? Hi, I'm Grace.
That's my name.
I'm gonna, like, keep that in, I swear to God. Kat.
Yeah, there it is. That's the intro.
That's the intro. Welcome to our history podcast, Secondary Source, where she doesn't have a name.
I'm the faceless creature who lives under your bed and knows a lot about history.
That sounds exactly right from what I know about you. Can you...
We're gonna get fucking sued by Welcome to Night Vale.
They'll never listen to this, let's be honest with ourselves.
Oh my god.
Okay, so this podcast is going to be about history. I think I said that. But...
yeah.
Because, like, I feel like a lot of people don't appreciate it, you know? Like,
yeah.
It's like, history's boring, and then you see Hamilton, and then and then you love history, but only for Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real with you. Hamilton is what really got me into history. I used to fucking hate it.
It's like, because, like, when you're learning it in a classroom, it's, like, dusty and dry, your textbook is, like, super boring. It doesn't tell you anything interesting. It's always like, and Iowa was specialized in iron working. And I...
Wow.
I don't...
What fucking orifice did you pull that out of?
Not the brain, that's for sure.
Is that an orifice?
It is now.
Oh, no, that's ominous.
So, yeah, so this podcast is supposed to be kind of more accessible, telling interesting stories, interesting profiles of people, hopefully. I guess. Probably, eventually. I actually don't know what you're going to be talking about. I only know what I'm talking about this episode.
Bold of you to assume that I know what I'm going to be talking about.
Well, I would hope so. Okay, so I guess we can kind of get into it, right? Should we just do it?
Guess. Yeah.
Okay, do you want to go first?
I feel like if you're comfortable with it, you should go first, because I don't know how long you want it to be.
Okay, I can do mine first.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about something that I learned about last year. That was just super cool. Very, well, tragic, but also super cool.
Oh, we love tragedy.
Oh, yeah. You gotta be able to enjoy tragedy in this life. Okay. But also, this is really old, so it's okay to laugh about it now, probably. So I'm going to be talking about the Lisbon Earthquake of 1755.
Well, so Grace, tell us what that is.
Okay, Lisbon is in Portugal. I wasn't sure the baseline I should have, but Lisbon is in Portugal. It's like the capital city, or at least it was back then. Portugal was like all over the spice trade, kind of massacring native peoples, you know, the usual for that period of time.
Yeah.
But so this is we're Kat together here. We're together. It's 1755. It's the morning of All Saints Day, which is November 1st. And we're gonna go to church together, okay? Because that's what everyone's up to. I know. It's not gonna go great for us, but we're going anyway because that's what everyone's doing, and it's the fashion. So everyone's going to church. It's like 9:40 a.m. and the first earthquake hits.
Very specific for 1755.
I know, it's crazy. I read that, and it was like, everyone was like, yeah, it was about 9:40 a.m.
So somebody just pulled that out of their ass.
You didn't have clocks back then. What are you talking about? I actually don't know when clocks, like, happened, but whatever. I guess they did know, because all the sources say 9:30. Okay, so this first earthquake destroys like everything. Like all the buildings except for like the very, very strongest ones, including all the churches where everyone was. So that's not great. And a big thing that happened was that buildings fell across these like super narrow streets, and they like crushed the shorter buildings that were across from them. And so a lot of people got like crushed and trapped in their homes. So that wasn't awesome. And then throughout the day, there were 2 more big shocks that like destroyed more and more things. And then there were relatively minor aftershocks basically throughout the rest of the day. But guess what? It was super cold that day. And also everyone was making fancy like All Saints Day dinners. And they were like, oh my god, we don't have electricity, so we don't have electric stoves. So we just cook over fires. So what happens when wooden buildings fall over and there's fires inside, Kat? What would you think?
I'm going to assume that they don't get to eat their dinner.
They don't get to eat their dinner because the whole house bursts into flames. Yeah, so the earthquake topples all these buildings. And remember, all the churches had like thousands of candles inside too. So the churches are all on fire. All the homes are on fire. Everyone's on fire. There's a huge, huge, huge like maelstrom now because like it had been like pleasantly breezy like early that morning, and then all of a sudden there's these huge, massive winds coming that are just like making the fire way bigger and like just urging it onward.
Jesus, happy All Saints Day, Grace.
I know. It actually turned out that like a significant number of people that had survived the initial quake but had been like trapped in their homes had just like burned to death. Which is like,
why are you laughing about that?
I don't know. Something about like you survived the initial earthquake, but the pot roast you were making kind of kills you. I don't know.
Oh my god.
I
Imagine
really
being that bad of a cook.
I know. Someone that day, God just got back at them because their pot roast was just a crime against humanity. I know. It's really sad, actually. But so hundreds and thousands of people were fleeing the main part of the city because not only was like the earthquake toppling all the buildings and stuff, but now there was this huge fire. So they're like, okay, we'll get to the river and the fire won't be able to get us, and then we can get across the river and there's like all this open space where no buildings will fall on us. So everyone's like, okay, let's go to the river. We don't know anything about seismology. We've never heard of a tsunami.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
you spoiled it.
I did kind of spoil it. So what happens next is the waters recede and everyone's like, okay, this is fine. It's fine. Everyone's like along the river because that's like the only place that's been safe so far. People are getting ferried across by like literally anyone who owns a boat is like on the river, like taking people across to the other side. And then a huge, huge, huge tsunami comes, and it comes up the river because it's like they're at the mouth of the river where it meets the ocean. So it like comes up the river, and everyone along the banks is kind of like destroyed. Which is, I know, there's a lot of death. But
I feel like we should preface this by saying that part of the podcast is that I don't know shit about what Grace is talking about, and Grace probably won't know shit about what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I'm learning with you.
Yeah, I think that's a good format because you can kind of act as like the proxy for the listener, you know? Yeah. And like ask questions that would make sense.
And be a stupid bitch.
Yeah, you know.
As one does.
As one does. Okay, so everyone along the river has now just been kind of washed away. There's a bunch of people who drowned. Along the coast, people drowned who were trapped in buildings. So if you were trapped in a building, I mean, it wasn't great in the first place, and then it was either fire or water. It was kind of the confluence of every element coming together to just destroy this city.
Cool.
I know, super great. There were actually 2 more tsunamis after this first one.
Thank God.
and these waves actually even destroyed the harbor. All the boats that were like moored, tied to like the docks were destroyed, which is really important because Lisbon was like the third largest trade city in the world at this point. So if you don't have a harbor, you're kind of lost. So that's kind of the end of the big destruction. After those waves come, that's kind of, everyone can kind of start seeing what's happened. And it turns out that the king, Jose the First, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but hopefully not. He was like, I think it was 5 miles away in his country palace. Because rich people have country palaces.
Go back. His country palace?
Yeah, he had a country palace.
Was there a city palace? Like,
yeah, there was a palace like right on the coast. So he and his family were really lucky. They were not at their like home, which had been like just really that thing just fell apart.
This is some fucking Bush did 9/11 shit. He did the Lisbon earthquake.
He caused the earthquake somehow.
And all those tsunamis.
And the tsunamis and the wind that made the fire worse. I bet he set the fire himself.
He personally pushed over those poles onto those houses.
Exactly.
He said, "Oops, did I do that?"
Oh,
yes,
no.
Hosea.
Yeah,
you did.
He actually is kind of a useless king because here's the thing:
he's
totally fine.
Still alive.
Oh, yeah, he's totally still alive. It's like Hitler, okay?
Whoa. That's a whole different thing.
I know. Sorry, I was watching Hunting Hitler the other day, and that's why.
That's a show?
In that mood. Yeah, you should watch it. It's really fun.
I should not watch it. Do you know how paranoid I would be?
Well, luckily for you, they think he went to Argentina. That's off topic, but, you know.
Wait, Hitler or Hosea?
Wait, okay, so King
Who are we
Jose.
talking about?
I don't know. Okay, back to King Jose. So he and his family survived just fine. Like, nothing, like, their country palace, as it may be, was totally fine. Like, untouched, basically. But for some reason, I don't know why, they just lived in a tent city outside their palace for a while. Like, I don't know why they decided to do that. But, like, he wasn't really sure how to handle this because he was one of those kings that you see in Disney movies who, like, doesn't govern, you know? He just, like, wants to go hunting and throw parties and be a party boy, you know?
Oh my god,
so
eat the rich.
Eat him. I bet the people of Lisbon, like, really wanted to eat him. Because
especially after all those disasters, can you imagine? They're all Saints Dinner was ruined. What else are they gonna eat?
I know, like, our pot roasts. I know. So they were living in this tent city, and here comes in, okay, what's this guy's name? I don't know how to pronounce this. Portuguese is very hard. So his name is Sebastio Jose de Carvalho e Melo. I'm going to call him Carvalho, because that's like the one name that I can pronounce in there.
Tag yourself. Wait, did you say Carmelo? I'm pretty sure that's a candy.
No, Carvalho.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, he was like a chocolate caramel.
Is that a candy?
I think, yeah, I feel like I've eaten one.
Okay, I want to know whether or not good. I'm being like...
No, they're just not very good. So he comes in, I believe he was Secretary of State at the time, something like that. And he comes in, he's like, hey, King, I'll handle this for you because you're kind of useless. And the king's like, okay, please do. And so there's this, like, apocryphal quote, like, between the two of them. And the king says, what should we do to meet this infliction of divine justice? And Carvalho, or the Marquis de Pombal, as he is called after this, he says, bury the dead and feed the living, which becomes really famous after this.
Well, I would hope that it's not the opposite, or that they're not, like,
I would love
feeding
to feed
the dead to the living, because that's how a lot of diseases have spread in the past.
I know, right?
Or I guess in the time that this happened.
Yeah, they didn't know any of that, Kat. They were still, like, killing themselves with leeches.
Yes, I was going to talk about that, but I was like, that's too medical.
Okay, so this guy, he goes right back to Lisbon after meeting with the king, and he, like, tries to figure out what he should do. Because, like, no one's dealt with something like this in, like, the modern time at the time. Like, in, like, a disaster of this proportion, I mean, what do you even do? And so he goes and
eat the rich.
Yeah, probably. Except for, he goes back intending to do this, like, feed the living, bury the dead thing, but he realizes that there's, like, really pressing problems that he needs to solve first, which is, like, you can kind of tell what his priorities were as a rich aristocrat, because he's like, oh, I need to feed these people, and then he gets there and he's like, oh, wait, crap, looters are stealing the palace, like, jewels. I have to stop it. So before he does anything else, he's like, okay, royal guards, go guard the royal palace. That's now in, like, shambles. The mint, where all the money is stored, and anywhere else that, like...
priorities.
Yeah, exactly. Like, anywhere else that, like, looters might be. And then he's like, okay, and if you catch a looter, just kind of do a trial. Like, you don't need a judge, just kind of do it. And then... And then he orders them to build, by his express command, they build these gallows, but they're not just, like, normal gallows, they're, like, built specifically to be really tall, so that as many people as possible will see these people die. Because he's, like, this kind of, like, French reign of terror type dude, and he's like, people respond better to fear than anything else, so I'll just kill everyone, and it'll be great. It does kind of work, though, is the thing. So,
Whoa.
Okay. I know. But so once he does that, he actually does finally, like, do the food thing. And he's like, okay, all these ships that survived and then incoming ships, all of you have to give up all the supplies that you have that you don't need for your own crew. And the incoming ships have to give up all of their goods totally duty-free. Like, just they have to give it up. Because otherwise everyone's going to die. What else? Oh, and then he also yells at shopkeepers. He's like, you guys have to keep the prices that you had before the disaster, because otherwise you'll have to work in a chain gang and clean up the rubble. And so, yeah, he kind of has all this, like, very regulated stuff going on. And he is feeding everyone, and there's a lot of aid that comes from other nations, because, like, newspapers are getting, like, wind of this, and these other countries are like, oh crap, we'll help you, even though we envy your riches.
I would never help.
I feel like that was probably, like, the mood of, like, 98% of countries, and then, like,
yeah, these people are definitely in fucking, like...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, the two... Like, because Lisbon was the third biggest trade city, so, like, the two other, like, biggest trade cities were like, okay, we can help you, because you're just, like, you're below us.
Yeah, and you definitely know that they...
helps them, but...
They, like, didn't do it out of the know that they didn't do it out of the kindness of their heart. They're like, give me shit, like...
They have no hearts, are you kidding me? Like, I don't even...
Yeah.
So, also, he hated... the church, the Catholic Church. He hated how much power they had in Lisbon at the time, in Portugal as a whole at the time. And there were a lot of priests who survived, who were going around in, like, the survivor camps going, like, the apocalypse has come, God hates us all, you know, that kind of thing. And he hated that. But he couldn't really do anything about it because the Catholic Church was, like, this massive power. But what he did do was he asked for permission, and he got it to bury the dead at sea instead of having to go through all these elaborate burial rites, which on one hand is, like, kind of sad, but, like, it also makes a lot more sense. You know?
Yeah, but I mean? How many dead?
I don't remember. Like, I want to say millions, something like that. Like, okay,
you're, like, telling me that there could have been, like, a shitload of dead people that are just in the fucking ocean right now.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of bones in there, huh?
Oh, I kind of want to go search, but so that's a biohazard.
Yeah, I mean, the fish off the coast were probably, like, really happy about it.
Fucking mutated.
Can you believe being like this little fisherman, like up the coast where the earthquake didn't hit so hard, and you're just going about your day, you're like fishing, and then you just like pull up a human skull.
Yeah, but you're getting like pretty hungry, so you think about it for a second.
You think about eating the human skull.
So you're like, man, I'm getting tired of fish, and then like you like pull up the net and there's this body in there, and maybe you don't do it, but maybe just for a second you look at that fucking body and you're like, I am pretty hungry and I'm pretty sick of fish.
Listen, I've been watching prepper shows for a while, like apocalypse prepper shows recently, and if I know anything, it's that you have to be willing to eat human flesh. Okay? You have to be willing / kind of want to a little bit.
I'm vegetarian, but I would rather eat a human before I eat, like, a cat, so...
That's fine.
Coming for you.
I can see. Oh my god. Okay. Listeners to this first terrible episode of this podcast, please understand. If I die, it is Kat's fault. I need you guys to be the witnesses to this.
I'm gonna get fucking arrested. Threat. Oh, so if you die, nobody's gonna know because I'm gonna eat you first. That's
actually true.
Oh, actually, this is getting away from cannibalism and going more towards war, so I want to stop talking about this.
Well, it wouldn't have if you just hadn't said the word. Oh. Well, now that's all that anyone's gonna hear. Yeah. Okay. Back to this. So there's all these people buried at sea, and it's like, feed the dead, bury the living, and he definitely did that. Some of the aid that other countries sent were like tents and very what's the word? Makeshift. Yeah, like makeshift little living quarters basically. So people were had places to live. It wasn't it was terrible, but they still had supplies and stuff like that. So when they were rebuilding, Carvalho kind of wanted to do this whole big plan. And he was like, okay, I got my 3 main engineers, and I have their names. And their names are, get ready for really bad mispronunciation.
Oh, no.
Okay, Manuel de Maya, Eugenio dos Santos a Carvalho, which is confusing, and then Caroline Mardel, something like that. It's fine. No one who's Portuguese will listen to this podcast, I hope. So he asks these engineers to develop plans, what should we do to rebuild? And they come back in a relatively short amount of time with 5 plans. Plan number 1 is just rebuild from the rubble itself for the materials. Nothing would change. Everything would just be really makeshift. It would be really cheap, though, which would be important for a country that just lost its harbor. But that would be, super boring. And Carvalho was not for that. He was a little bit dramatic. And plan number 2 and 3 were just widen some major streets and limit building height, because one of the big problems was that taller buildings would fall on the shorter ones across these really narrow streets. And they would block streets and make it really hard to find your way out, because it was kind of a maze at that point, navigation around the city. And then plan number 5, which was the lead engineer's favorite, was just totally abandon Lisbon and then build a new city in Belém, which is where the king's palace was. The king's country palace was. Which, if you remember, it survived really well, which is because, get this, it was actually on, a bedrock of volcanic basalt, volcanic rock that, that withstands, seismic waves a lot better. So it was probably a good idea, but they didn't want to do that one. And so he went with plan number 4, which is basically just totally get rid of the existing city center, let everyone around the outskirts of the city do whatever they want, but in the center, we're going to do a new total plan, just totally renovate it. And just so that it's clear, the center is called the Baixa, so I don't have to keep saying the word city center. It's called the Baixa. Okay. And I looked up how to pronounce that one, so I know how to do it. There's an X in there. You wouldn't know it, but there is.
Where's the X? Here's time for a fun secondary source minigame. If you can Lead us in. We're the X's. You don't have to listen to us anymore.
Okay, so he's like, okay, now you stupid engineer. He didn't call them stupid. He liked them. I don't know why I said that. So he's like, okay, engineers, go make more plans for this city center. And he's like, all I need you to do is make sure that current church land is respected, because otherwise they'll yell at me. He wanted modern sanitary infrastructure, which is really cool. And he wanted it to be based on this Enlightenment ideal of symmetry. Because I believe there's a quote from him saying he wanted Lisbon to be this beacon of light for the rest of the world to see this Enlightenment progress. So the plan by Eugenio dos Santos a Carvalho won, actually. And basically what it was is if it's these wide streets, it's a grid like New York City and Chicago and that kind of thing. And then these big grand squares. And here's the thing, it emphasized really important locations like the palace and the mint and important trading houses. And here's where Carvalho kind of got his revenge against the church for hating them. He also had this plan, instead of streets ending at churches like they used to, the streets just went straight past the church entrance. So it kind of became like any other building. It didn't have a place of importance anymore. So, which I don't think the church actually noticed, but I think it was just his little thing that he could do, to get back at them a little bit. So another interesting thing about the city center is he had this whole new architecture style that he and his engineers developed together. And it's actually called Pombaline architecture, because remember he's the Marquis de Pombal. And it's basically just very plain kind of military look. So inside all these buildings too was this new structure, I guess, called the Gaiola Pombalina, which was intended to resist seismic forces in the event of another earthquake. And it's basically these wooden X's embedded into the walls. The wooden structures were also supposed to help the stone facade at the front of the building fall, without the rest of the building fall. The stone facades were connected by this little weak-ish tendon. And then if an earthquake was to hit, it was supposed to break, and the rigid stone face would fall without pulling the rest of the building down with it, which was actually a really interesting idea. So it turns out that this system of X's, the Gaiola, it was studied by a modern seismologist, and it turns out it does a really, really good job. It does what it's supposed to do. It resists horizontal seismic waves really well, which is really interesting. It's, I read something somewhere where I believe it was the first Western example of purposefully anti-seismic architecture. Oh, and then to control fire, there were these thick stone walls between buildings to stop fire from spreading, and the main floors only used stone supports because the hearths were on those floors. So if the building collapsed, it would be way less chance of a fire spreading because of that. So, yeah. Oh, and then he also, before all this happened, he created a survey with his engineers to go through the survivors and ask them actually what happened. And that survey, with basic questions what did you see and that kind of thing. And that survey is, I believe it's still the basis of modern seismic surveys that are used by modern seismologists in response to earthquakes. So, yeah, that's the story.
Woo! I would clap, but I would ruin the audio.
Was it good?
It was.
I didn't know if it was good.
It was very good. Oh, so I think that you might be fucking cheating because you wrote a paper on it, but... I
did write a paper on it, but it was it was last year. So it wasn't super recent.
Yeah, I Googled.
I mean, what do you think I did to write the paper? Although there is a really good book that I read for it. I can't remember what it was called, but I mean, if you look up the earthquake, you'll find it. Just look up Lisbon Earthquake book, 1755. You'll find it. It's good.
Okay, send me the title.
I will.
Grace, I don't think we ever said my name on here.
If they haven't got it by now, I don't think they're gonna get it. Do you want to just, like, say your name before you do yours, though? Do your introduction. Tell us a fun fact about yourself. Like, this is the first day of school. Because it kind of is, a little bit.
What did you do over the summer? So, I'm Kat.
Woo! Go Kat.
This is fucking, like, I'm interesting, right? But whenever people are like, tell us a fact about yourself, I'm like, ah! I'm not interesting. I don't have facts about myself.
You have a cat, which is fun.
I do. I have a cat on my lap right now.
Yeah.
He's my baby. Anyway.
Okay, what are you... For Kat, tell me what you're going to tell me about.
So mine is definitely not going to be as long as a story as yours, and that's not.
That's because I did too much research about it.
Yeah, that wasn't like passive aggressive. Like I liked it, learning about it, but I just tend to either be really long-winded in papers or really like get my information out pretty well with speaking.
Yeah.
So originally I was going to do Edgar Allan Poe. And
that would have been so good.
Oh yeah, it would have been. But then I decided that I should just do a so-called cursed experiment that I found literally earlier today. So
cursed experiment? What?
A cursed experiment.
What experiment?
Oh, no, we're not actually doing it. I'm just talking about it.
Oh God, okay.
Oh God, we're definitely not actually doing it. It's terrible. So, to preface this, in about, I believe it was 1793, there was an outbreak of yellow fever in Philadelphia. It killed several thousand people. For people who aren't listening, and I promise this won't get too sawbonesy, yellow fever is a virus that's found in, like, tropical regions of Africa and South America, and other tropical regions throughout the world, but that's about all the tropical regions. Anyway, we know now that it's transmitted through mosquito bites that transfer human blood. Mm-hmm. It's very rare in U.S. travelers, and I believe there are like 0 cases in the past few years. So it's pretty strange, but it was real bad in this time period. So, in 1804, a medical student called, and I'm not making this up, his fucking first name is Stubbins.
Stubbins? His first name?
Stubbins. Stubbins.
Are you kidding?
No, that's his first name.
What's
his mother just dated him for 9 months and decided to name her kid Stubbins.
Stubbins.
His last name is Ffirth. So Stubbins Ffirth.
Ffirth.
But Ffirth, like F-I-R-T-H. It actually has 2 F's. It's F-F-I-R-T-H.
This kid, I feel bad for him as a child.
Oh, yeah. He looks like his name would be Stubbins.
Oh, no.
He was born in 1784. And he actually lived, I mean, he wasn't here for a long time. He was here for a good time for him.
He does look like his name would be Stubbins. You're right.
Don't spoil yourself. But he was an American doctor, and he really isn't known for anything else except for what I'm about to basically kink shame him for.
No. Which
would be, he started studying at the University of Pennsylvania, so UPenn, where I would love to go, in 1801. In his 3rd year of studying, he became acquainted with yellow fever because of how it occasionally appeared in colder cities. Like in 1793, about, I believe, like 9 years after he was born, there was an outbreak in Philadelphia that killed several thousand people, like I said earlier. But it was really, like, unknown what the causes were. Mm-hmm. So it was spread around by physicians that suggested, because they didn't know back then what caused it. It was suggested that it was spread by bad air, so, like, airborne.
Oh,
so
like the
Stubbins,
miasma theory?
Yeah. So Stubbins. Fucking Stubbins. Stubbins came, like, he basically came to the conclusion that, hey, maybe it's spread by, like, bodily fluids, particularly, like vomit and, like, shit, basically. So in 1804, he started on his experiments, which basically, well, he started on a few. His first experiment, it basically involved collecting vomit from dying yellow fever patients and feeding and injecting animals with it.
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
That's his first thing he wants to do?
Yeah, so his first experiment, the official one, was a small-sized dog was confined in a room and fed bread soaked in vomit. So
I don't know how to respond to that.
It gets worse.
Why is that your first thing you think of?
No, it's so bad because after about, like, I think it was 4 days, the dog started liking the vomit so much that he would just eat the vomit without the bread. So they stopped doing the experiment.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. So Stubbins, he tried other methods. This is kind of upsetting, this one. The only drawback from this experiment was that one dog died about 10 minutes after having an ounce of vomit injected into its jugular, but I'm pretty sure that might be because it had a fucking needle of vomit in its jugular.
Yeah, I don't think that's yellow fever. I think maybe
but
that's
the other
getting...
The other ones remained healthy. After 5 experiments with no results, he stopped working with animals and began to experiment on himself. In 1802, he wrote this, basically. On October 4th, 1802, I made an incision in my left arm, midway between the elbow and wrist, as to draw a few drops of blood. Into the incision, I introduced some fresh black vomit. A slight degree of inflammation ensued, which entirely subsided in 3 days, and the wound healed up very readily. Black vomit is the term used for yellow fever vomit. I don't know why they're different colors, but whatever. So yeah.
So he did it to dogs, and he was like, well, that didn't work. I guess it's time to do it to myself.
Yeah, he didn't even try in other people. He was just like, okay, in the name of science.
When like, drug testing doesn't work on mice, they don't then do it to people.
Oh, Grace, darling Grace, it gets so much worse.
What the cat?
Like, reading it makes me like, ah.
Okay, tell me.
So, Stubbins continued basically fucking with the vomit of dying patients, including injecting it into his veins, under his cuticles, and into his eye.
I need you to just keep talking. Just get through this. I can't.
For his 10th experiment on himself, not including the animal one, he fried up vomit in a pan and inhaled the steam. And when that didn't work, he constructed his own, as he called it, vomit sauna.
What?
Sitting at length for, I believe it was like 3 hours. In a
this
small
guy just
closet.
loved vomit.
I told you I'm fucking kink shaming him. In a small closet with 6 ounces of steaming vomit. Eventually, he decided, hey, this isn't enough. I'm not horny enough from all of this. So we're gonna eat it. We're gonna eat it.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah. He wrote, after repeating the last 2 experiments several times, and with precisely the same result, I took half an ounce of the black vomit immediately after it was ejected from a patient, diluting it with 1.5 ounces of water, swallowed it. The taste was very slightly acidic. It neither produced nausea or pain. My pulse, which is beating 76 in a minute, moderately strong and full, was not altered either, in force or frequency. No more effect was produced than if I had taken water alone. Stubbins basically... Fucking Stubbins. Yeah, that makes it so much worse that I'm, like, kink-shaming a man who ate vomit and his name is Stubbins. But,
I'd love to go back in time and just kind of kill this man for his own good.
What are you doing, Stubbins?
Stubbins needs some help.
I think it makes it worse that he was named like he was a child's teddy bear. But,
yeah. Oh, no.
So, he repeated these experiments because he doesn't know when the fuck to give up. He repeated this, quote-unquote, a great number of times. We don't really know how many times.
Stop it!
Eventually drinking several doses of vomit, which were about 2 ounces each. Eventually, he conceded that yellow fever was not, like, carried in vomit and transmission of stuff, and wasn't transmitted by that bodily fluid. And what makes it better is that...
After, 80 tests, he was like, okay, now I'm no longer getting my rocks off on this, so I'm just gonna say it doesn't do it.
Oh, no, he probably just continued it.
Oh, my God.
But, hey, I'm a doctor. Please vomit in my mouth.
Kat, you are emetophobic. How are you doing this story?
So, and what makes it even funnier is that in 1901, so about 100 years after he did this, is when they finally figured out that it was carried by blood by mosquitoes. So he did this, and they didn't find out for 100 years afterwards that it was carried by mosquitoes. He
could have been this revolutionary guy if he had just stopped thinking about vomit for a minute and was like, maybe I should try blood.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try the blood though.
I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't say anywhere, but I would not be surprised if he just kept doing it.
Oh my God.
Or if he decided, hey, maybe some shit. I'm kink shaming this man.
Oh, he deserves it. If I, furries, you do you, man. But, Stubbins? Don't be a Stubbins.
Don't be a Stubbins. That's the fucking tagline for Secondary Source. Don't be a Stubbins.
That's gonna be the exit line now. Goodbye.
God, you had, this fucking, awesome story, and I'm just hey, I'm kink shaming this man whose name is Stubbins.
It's perfect. It's really good. It was a good story. It wasn't good, but it was interesting. It's definitely history for sure. Yeah. It did happen in the past. This is how you know history's fun, kids. You can kink shame people.
And you would never go over this and fucking A-push.
You'll never see this even on one of those BuzzFeed lists about things your history classes won't tell you.
A-push would never.
A-push would never. Now I feel like someone from, the AP board is gonna, listen to this, and then, next year's, long essay question is gonna be, tell us about Stubbins. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I have a lot more cursed experiments to talk about, but that can happen later.
Okay.
The time that they gave dolphins LSD, and then the dolphin got horny and fucked a human.
I remember that one.
Oh, yeah.
That one.
That's my favorite story to tell at parties.
Okay, so do you want to do a sign-off now? Okay. So that was the podcast. Secondary Source.
So that was the podcast. Can't wait to try and make this cohesive in editing.
Oh boy, that's my job. You don't have to think about that.
Yeah, I like to pretend to our listeners that
you like to pretend that you're gonna have to do it. Okay, that was the freaking podcast, guys. I mean,
like and subscribe. Comment down below.
I've spent a lot of today watching, for some really terrible reason, college day in my life videos from beauty vloggers.
I fucking love those videos.
Me too. But when you said like and subscribe, I was had this visceral, I flinched physically. It was bad.
Do I stop it?
Well, no, because we still have to say the outro.
But do we have an outro?
Do it.
Do we?
We didn't do it.
Do we? Do we have one?
I'll do it. I'll do part of it. Okay?
Okay, I'll follow your lead.
Okay. So that was the podcast, Secondary Source.
I was ready for this amazing fucking outfit. So that was the podcast. This was a Secondary Source, a history podcast for nerds and not nerds, maybe. Maybe our demographic is just nerds. That's okay. Oh, no, it's definitely just nerds.
It's just nerds.
So thank you for listening to Secondary Source. Just remember, A push would never.
Yeah.
A push would never.
A push would never. Do not be a Stubbins.
Don't be a Stubbins.